Let me ask you a question about service levels. In some cases, service levels have dropped in advertising, media marketing. In other areas, they've become much better. Are you seeing more demand for better service from clients, or are clients really starting to do a lot of the work themselves and just expect you to be an order taker?
Not exactly. No, I mean I think there's always a strong need for good customer service, and I guess certainly given that I've been running PostClick for 3 years and I've been involved in online media sales for at least 5, and before that I worked in offline media sales, so I've been dealing with advertising agencies for probably the last 7 or 8 years. So in a sense I tend to I think understand what is necessary to provide good customer service, and I think a lot of the media buyers will appreciate the fact that they can deal with someone who is experienced in terms of knowing the sort of levels of service and commitment that they require. Equally too, a lot of the sites that we have been selling, we've been selling for a long period of time, so a lot of the media buyers that we deal with know those particular sites, they know that they work very well for particular clients, and as a consequence they will then come back to us and say, look, we've got some more money to spend for client XYZ, what can you do on this particular site? So there's less of a sales process involved in that because they're sold on the site. It's just a matter of how we can package something up. But certainly with new sites that we bring on board, such as RSVP or Funky Sexy Cool, we have to be a little more aggressive in the market in trying to educate, if you like, media buyers as to the advantages of using those particular sites.
Are you focused on the Australian market, or are you looking outside of the region?
Well, certainly in terms of, I guess, the immediate core of our business is within the Australian market. But we certainly do business with some US-based companies, some Israeli-based companies. Again, clients abroad who are looking for Australian eyeballs, or again, Australian clients here who are looking to reach people in US or European markets. So, we've certainly spoken with a few UK-based networks about the possibility of, again, selling some of their UK-based inventory, because again, there's a large amount of Australian traffic looking at UK-based sites. So, I guess the nature of the web is such that you can really be selling, a campaign for a client who's based in, say, the US, for example, and you're dealing with a company who's based in Israel, and it's one of the, I guess, the beauties of this industry is that we can deal that way.
Yes, we sometimes forget that there are 1 billion people online, which is like China, really, like looking at China or India as a whole market, and that having 1% of that market or 2%, like in Ask Jeeves, is actually 10 to 20 million people and a significant number of consumers.
That's right, yeah. That's definitely.
In terms of some of the global sites you're looking at, what would be the numbers of users on those sites in terms of country size? Are we looking at New Zealand's or Australia's, or what size companies?
Well, I mean, I just guess I'm trying to look at one example, which is the hotbar toolbar that we sell. I mean, they have around 300,000 users in Australia and 70,000 in New Zealand, but on a worldwide basis, they have close on 1.5 million users. So, the Australian traffic. Correct. Yeah, most definitely. So I think there's certainly a lot more scope to deal with overseas sites. As
consumers, how do Australians and also marketers, how do Australians differ from people in the UK or the US?
Look, good question. I mean, I'm not exactly familiar with the UK and the US markets to that degree, but certainly from what I read, I mean, and understand and talk to people both in the UK and the US, that obviously those markets are much bigger than our particular market here. What struck me as interesting about the UK market is that even though their population is really only about 3 times the size of ours, if you like, the overall media spend on a per annum basis is probably around 10 times of what ours is, from what I understand. And I think that's because they're obviously doing more pan-European buys, whereas the Australian market is still very much centred on the Australian market. So even though geographically we're a part of the Asia-Pac region, I think we still see ourselves as being very much a little island, in a sense, within that whole region. So there's less, I really see less sort of Asian
buys, yes.
I really see less Pan-Asian buys. And maybe most of those buys have been driven from Hong Kong or Singapore, but I really see very little Pan-Asian activity here. We did do one campaign just recently for British Airways, which we ran on Bloomberg.com, and that was a campaign that ran obviously in the Australian market, but also reached into Thailand and Hong Kong and Taiwan as well. So, but again, those sorts of campaigns are very few and far between.
What do you think it's going to take for Australia to behave more like a part of Asia, or do you think that's even possible for us to do?
Well, I think in the long term it's certainly possible, but certainly with the sort of intermingling of the population, the Asian population, the sort of traditional Australian population, the geographic proximity that we have to various parts of Asia, I think that trend will accelerate over the next sort of 20 to 30 years. But
business-wise, not going to affect us probably in our business lives?
Well, perhaps towards the later end of our business lives, but perhaps not in the next 4 or 5 years, not so much, no.
What are the big trends that you see emerging in the next 12 months?
Well, I think there's obviously going to be an increased focus, I guess, on search. The search segment of the market overall seems to have really taken off over the last 2 or 3 years, and Nielsen reports that I read suggest that it really is the fastest growing segment of the market. But equally too, the sort of display section of the banners, etc., that we sell, and also the classified listing section of the market are equally growing, although it would seem to be not as at faster rate as the search section is. But I think, look, there'll be an increased take-up of rich media offerings, iBlaster type offerings. I think I think already there is a backlash, a user backlash against pop-ups and pop-unders to a certain extent, and I think over time that will certainly accelerate. I think, from what I understand, Microsoft Internet Explorer have introduced a pop-up blocker automatically in the latest version of their software. But equally too, I know from selling the Hotbar application that it gets very good results for advertisers here, and they come back for more to use the same product. So it's obviously working, because the click-through rate is much better than it is for the standard banners and whatever else.
And with Gator becoming part of, or rebranding, or becoming part of the Claris network,
correct, yeah.
That more, I call it insidious advertising, because it's stuck there in your computer and you can't get rid of it. But
That's
it
right.
seems to be increasing in popularity, and they're definitely increasing their revenue, so something must be working in that form of advertising.
Well, it's very targeted advertising, as in if you're looking at a travel site and you've downloaded the Hotbar application or the Gator application or whatever it is, that advertiser or that application knows that you've gone to a travel site and can therefore then show you an Air New Zealand ad or a Qantas ad. So its context is very tightly targeted. So, but equally too, banners on the banner ads or tower ads well placed in a particular part of the finance site can equally too have the same impact, because again they're contextually based, as in they're reaching that particular user at their sort of point of interest, if you like.
Hotbar, how much has it grown in Australia over the last year or two?
Well, certainly since we've been selling it for the last 6 months, I think certainly in terms of users, I think its user base has increased about 10% from what I'm told. Certainly in terms of revenue, it came from a revenue of 0 up to the current figure that we have it at today.
Well, 10% not a bad figure for a year. Without a great deal of awareness.
That's correct, yeah. So let's hope that continues.
Okay, well I think we're going to be looking out for Hotbar, and we'll look out for more iBlaster advertising as well over the next year on the PostClick network. I want to thank Andrew Lockwood. Andrew, thank you so much for coming in.
Pleasure, thanks for having me today, Lara. Thank you.
With absolute delight to talk to you, and look forward to seeing you all next week at 9 a.m.